Conversation steering is probably what at this point I would consider the critical aspect of my dating success, if you want to call it dating. It took me the longest to develop. It's by far the most complicated. It's still the most effective way that I get things moving in my direction beyond the dating world too. It's professionally, it's personally, it's in the dating world. You need to be able to drive the conversation in the direction that you are the most competent, most comfortable in. And it's a skill that you have to refine over thousands of different scenarios, because who you're talking to, what situation you're in, where your skills lie, it's always changing. So if you can get a solid base on steering the conversation in the direction that you need things to go, it's this skill that you can wrap up in the single. It's charisma to a degree. It's an intelligent version of charisma. Now that I sit here and talk about it, but I've always said that charisma has a monetary value, and if you can talk your way into free stuff, you can talk your way into jobs, and it all breaks down to conversation steering.
It's a useful tool that I think you don't necessarily know where the conversation will lead you to sometimes. For example, is like our conversations that we have here. We kind of just go with the flow. However, try to maintain a common thread throughout the entire conversation to instill some sort of sense of, okay,
it helps to have an end goal.
This is ultimately what we're talking about, but here's some side tangents, here's some things that I wanted to bring up while I was talking about this specific topic. And when you can do that consciously and with a meaningful I don't even know what I'm trying to say.
A narrative or a purpose.
Yeah, exactly. You can get away with a lot more in terms of being able to say what you need to say so that someone understands, okay, yeah, this person is good at talking, conversation.
It is, but it signals so many things. It signals intelligence. It signals competence and the ability to maintain a train of thought throughout a conversation. And with women, it's this amazing signal that you know what the fuck you're talking about. Mm-hmm. They don't want to be with some guy who's clueless, just floating through life, just taking whatever is handed to them. It's like, no, the way that I talk about this shit means that I know what I'm doing. There's purpose behind every word that I say here. Yeah. And I'm not just filling people's heads with dreams, or my head's not filled with dreams. There's critical thought that goes into it.
And it's not something that you're like, it's not so rigid that you're like practicing these things in the mirror. It comes
You're
naturally.
fucking up if you're thinking too hard about it.
Yeah, it comes naturally, but you're also, there's a very metacognitive approach where as you're talking with someone, especially someone, some hot girl or something like that, or especially people at work, you're trying to get your point across, and you're taking what they're giving you too, and you're going, oh, okay, here's some talking points based on what they just mentioned to me now. It's a lot like it's almost like speech and debate, right? Because that's what you do when you're debating someone. You're thinking, okay, here's what they just mentioned. I can elaborate on 3 different points based on their one bullet point. And it's very fast math that you're doing in your head. But if you get good at it, you can do it so that it's so subtle, it's so sly, that by the time you're spitting out what you wanted to say, you're already 3 steps ahead to leading up to where you wanted to ultimately go.
You have to be thinking that far in advance too, because if you just say something with nowhere else to go, and her response or the other person's response is shorter or longer than you expect, then your next step, you don't exactly know where you're going. And you're right, it is fast math. It's trying to figure out if the other person does this, how am I going to juke and jive to keep things moving in my direction? And it's definitely a tool for when you want to be driving the conversation, as much as I enjoy just blind wandering through the forest conversations. But like take the first date example that we've been talking about. There's been a few occasions where, let's get into the first date example. So I had this Tinder date that we had. She was sexy, but it took me a while to try and figure out. I was just looking to get laid that night. I don't look to date anyone off of Tinder anyways, but we met up at Fuzzy's and had a couple margaritas, and I was exercising the approach of, let's just let her talk about herself for a while until I can cling on to something that I can like drive forwards. And eventually she gets into how she had this study abroad experience in France or whatever, and she met this guy there that she dated the entire time that she was there. And so I kind of drove this narrative of like, why didn't that work out? Like, what did you guys do while you were there? Like, what did you have in common? How are things going now? And she gets to reflect on all these good times, and she gets to think back to France and all this fun stuff. And it ultimately works out in my benefit, because she's there having a good time with me, reflecting on having a good time, and then I get the whole benefit of just sitting back and relaxing. That's my two steps plan at that point. Is pretty cool. It's kind of a lazy approach to it, but I had this awesome opportunity to just I sat back and drank a half a margarita while she told this whole story about it, and then keep that all in the back of your head, because you're going to want to do callbacks later. And ultimately, we went back, and I hooked up with her that night. Of course, she gave the typical girl response of, I don't normally do this. Well, of course you don't, because this is where it was supposed to end up, because I know what I'm talking about a little bit, and you had fun talking about yourself, and you got a sexcapade out of it.
Well, no, every girl says that
they do. They do. They only say that with guys who know what they're talking about.
If they say we're not having sex, I know I'm having sex with them.
Of course. That's the token rule. If you haven't seen it, go back and watch Spread. Did you see Spread?
No.
The movie?
No.
Ashton Kutcher.
Yeah, I know. You told me.
I'm gonna have to keep it on your list. But anyways,
I'll have to watch that. So it's funny that you say that. There's a subtlety too to what you're saying. It's mostly that, just like when I was solving like physics problems, you were given like an initial set of things that you know, which initially you had to ask questions about. So you had to ask the questions, figure out, okay, this is what I know. Here's a middle ground that I can talk about, or not even middle ground, maybe just I know I can get this person to elaborate on this. And from that, I can attach some sort of points that I know that I'm confident in, and from that, I can make myself sound, confident or interesting in some way or appealing. And by the end of the conversation, you're both satisfied with the information that's been put forth. But so you have your initial information by asking questions. From that, okay, now let's get the ball rolling. Okay, not only that, now I'm going to throw out other things that I can gauge their reaction from and see if this is worth pursuing, at least in the context of a first date. So my one other thing I wanted to mention too is I think you have to be really open-minded about where things are going to end up. Because I used to be like, no, I want things to go exactly like this, and if they don't go like that, then it's just going to be shitty. Mainly if I don't get sex right away. Like that's you.
Right.
You have to charm your way into the pussy.
There's a level of intelligence too, because if they throw some goofy shit at you, you have to know how to respond to that.
Right.
To try and keep things at least in the direction that you're going. So
sure.
That's why I advocate for just making things like, just make them super strange or weird. And I know that's like your ultimate philosophy, but it's like, if you can make it fun, then the whole conversation is a game. And there's no downside. Everybody wins.
And it's also a matter of being very flexible with what you're listening to and what your understanding of something is. And if you don't understand, don't ever hesitate to ask more questions. Just like if you were at a job and you like, you know, your boss is telling you something, then you go, well, wait a minute, I don't understand that. Can you please explain that?
The best part about this is, as a guy in the dating world, asking questions and letting the girl talk is also a fantastic approach.
It's almost one of the easiest ways to
it is
to just
it is
get in.
It's almost a cheating method. Is just, you don't even prepare questions, just like, oh, tell me about France.
Oh, so what was that?
What was France like? What did you study? What were your teachers like? You could talk for 5% of a date and get laid. I've done it before. It's that easy. That's probably the most effective, simple approach to conversation steering as a man, is just pitching them softballs to talk about themselves, because, like I said, they reflect on having good times. They get to share, which is what they want to do anyways. Yep. And then they see you as this caring individual who's interested.
Yep. And you have to be comfortable with the information that they're going to tell you. I've had girls tell me about some of their like most recent sexual experiences, and the former me, and I don't know if any other dudes are like this, but I mean, I would get kind of jealous. I'd be like, damn, like this guy already had sex with her. Jesus, like fuck that guy, fuck this bitch. Like I'm gonna leave. I'm going home. I'm upset
Easy
now.
dick.
See, exactly. Like, so that was my former self. But now when they tell me shit, like this dude had a giant dick and he just slapped me with it, and it was like blah blah blah, and I would be like, that's fucking hilarious. Like I just go, that's funny, like because it is.
And here's the thing, they're not telling you that out of some sense of malice. They don't want to bring you down. That's just like, and here's the thing, I've caught myself doing it to girls too, and I look back, I was like, damn, like if she would have told me a story like that, it would have fucked me up. And it might have fucked her up a little bit, but you've got to be emotionally and socially aware enough to just be like, all right, now that's on the table. And here's the thing, if you're far enough along where she tells you some sexcapade story, you can pivot off of that.
Dude, totally embrace it.
You have to be able to take that. It's just another tool in your arsenal that you can use. Don't berate them. Like, everything has to be positive, like in an upward positive position.
Yes.
Not positive in like everything's going to be okay, but like, let's keep advancing this conversation in the direction that I want it to go.
Just be generally curious.
Yes. Curious is, because if you let things like affect you, and then the whole tone of the conversation changes, women are so much more in tune with this than men are.
That's so true.
So
they pick up on those very subtle
super
nuances.
subtle. So you have to keep it blatantly moving forwards.
Yeah.
So that even if they are subtle to it, it's like we were going positive, now we're going a little less. It's not like, oh, that just ruined his night and now I'm sad.
I've worked I did this very masterfully, I would say, but I match with this girl. She's from Australia. She's there for like one more night. So I know, it's pretty much already guaranteed that what's going to happen is going to happen.
You still have to deliver, though.
But I still got to show up and...
You have to deliver via chat and in person.
Got to play the A game. So we start texting. She's like, what are you doing for dinner tonight? Initially, I was even like I already ate or something like that. I don't remember exactly what the response was, but I still said, I'll totally meet you out. Like let's go get a beer. Well, so it turns out she was in Boulder for like a meditation thing. She was staying at this woman's place that was like hosting the meditation thing. Not only that, it was an Airbnb, so there was actually another guy staying there who was working in Colorado somewhere, but he decided to tag along because the hostess was like, oh, why don't you take, I don't remember his name, why don't you take Freddie and you guys can go out to Pearl Street and have a good time. And so she threw that in the mix. She tells me this while I'm like on the way to the meeting point, and I'm like, okay. Like that to me was like a big opening into, I am kind of uncomfortable with having someone else there, but if I act uncomfortable, I already know I'm ruining the tone. Like I'm destroying what might possibly be a good time.
Right.
So I fully just go, yes, absolutely. Just say yes, do it. So I meet them, and initially there's already barriers there because he doesn't speak English that well, and but he speaks it well enough that I can get my points across. He doesn't necessarily get some of the humor. Not a big deal. So we go get a beer. We sit down. I start talking to her. She's already interested because I've already accepted a pretty large barrier. And she goes, okay, maybe this guy knows what he's doing at this point. So it's up to me to now converse with both of them. Both of them. You have to address everyone in the room, right?
You're demonstrating conversational and social skills there.
Absolutely.
Being accepting of this weird situation. I'm not from here, but I'm just having fun. So
both of them aren't from there. So I'm here showing them a good time, saying, "Oh, I love this place. Let's go to this place." We go to the place, we get beers, we sit down. I'm telling them jokes. I'm making them laugh. I'm saying dumb shit, and ultimately the conversation went along the lines of like, okay, me to her. Hey, so what do you do in Australia? Blah, blah, blah. She tells me. And then I'd go to him. Hey, so blah, blah, blah. No, fully knowing like, okay, I got to keep them both in the loop. It's like fighting two people at the same time where, you're bobbing and weaving and ducking. They're throwing punches too and you're ducking their punches. But then at the same time, you're still throwing more punches out. And so, I gained her affection pretty quickly because she's trying to get it in. Let's face it. I understand that. And he's just trying to have a beer and see what's up. And we ended up going to one bar, and that's where he kind of broke off because he was like, "Oh, I'm tired. I'm going to go to bed." And I was like, "This is perfect."
You have to take advantage of that too.
So I knew he was leaving, so he left. I started dancing with her, and another thing in conversation steering, sometimes conversation doesn't have to necessarily be done with words. Here's where that happens. So the dude goes home. Now it's just her and I. We're walking around Pearl Street. She sees these Australian dudes that she saw earlier that night and starts chatting with them. I'm ready to go home. Well, she's chatting with them, and I start to go, okay, maybe she wants to go home with them, whatever. So I start turning around. I start walking away. She sees this and immediately runs up to me, and we just start making out.
That's a solid point of like, hey, if I haven't made this clear enough, something needs to happen and I'm ready to go now. Yep. And so that you made a conversation with body language in
right.
Let's go. This conversation that you're having with
you're
these
either
people,
following me or I'm going home.
Right.
That was it. And so we go back to my place, boom, done deal. A very more intimate conversation I've had was with the Hooters girl from Las Vegas I went home with. And this is one of those girls that said, on the drive to her house, she's driving me. She goes,
I was there.
We're not having. No, you weren't in the car.
Oh,
no, this is afterwards. So we dropped your ass off at Hooters Hotel.
Okay.
She's taking me home, and immediately one of her first things is, "We're not having sex." I'm like, yes. I'm like, fucking score,
Here's
dude.
the thing, though. Here's the thing. The best part about that comment, and every guy's gotten this comment. Even in high school, you get this comment. That comment means. Because when that comment comes up, typically sex isn't what is being discussed at the time. It kind of comes out of the blue. Mm-hmm. And the guy goes like, well, like it's easy for just like the loser version of me to go like, why are you thinking about sex? No, that means that she's thinking about fucking.
She's thinking
about fucking.
She's
thinking
trying
about
to resist.
fucking with you. Which means like as soon as she tells you that, you should be ecstatic the way that Nick just demonstrated because that just means you have a very small barrier to get over as opposed to like the initial one. That means that in her head, sex is on her mind and you're the guy behind it. So all you have to do is just set the mood, that's not even a part of this. The whole the conversation's been steered there. You're winning. You're already on the racetrack.
And what's funny with conversations, too, is sometimes you could shoot yourself in the foot. And here's an example of that. So we get back to her place. We ended up please. We ended up upstairs in her room. And we're already taking clothes off. We're making out. We're doing all this fun stuff. And me and my stupid mouth, sometimes I get into trouble because I say some stupid shit. But I ended up calling her stupid. And she took wicked offense to that because she was stupid, and And so she started to get butthurt while we're on her bed, like pretty much naked. And that's when I had to pull out some really crafty moves here. So she goes, "I'm not stupid. Why did you say that?" And I go, "Oh, come on. Like, I'm just kidding, right?" And she goes, "No, people call me stupid all the time. Like, I'm not stupid. I swear to God. Like, blah, blah, blah." So she's all butthurt about this. And I'm like, it's totally a joke. Like, you can take it as, a personal thing. But I pulled this line out from a dude that I met a while back, and he said a similar thing. And I said, "You know how, like, if someone calls you a bitch and you respond, to me that means you're a bitch, because that's your name now. Because now you responded to being called a bitch because you're a bitch." Well, I said the same thing with stupid. I was like, well, so if I'm calling you stupid now and you're responding like this, to me that means you're stupid. And she goes, "Okay," and we immediately started making out again, and I got it in.
This is a great point.
Fucking
I'm glad you
money.
brought that up. Backtracking is a huge red flag to women. As soon as you start going, then you're just sputtering, huge red flag to them. You don't stand behind what you said. You said what you said for a reason, right? So, first of all, just don't be an idiot when you say the first thing. Say what you say with intention. As soon as you start backtracking, when they see that, then you're not moving forward the way that we talked about earlier. The conversation isn't progressing. So the best thing to do that there is to pivot and move forward. You can turn it into a joke or an inside joke the way that you did it, and then keep moving forward. You just have to do it in a way that's saying like, "Hey, what I said wasn't meant in malice, but I still said what I said intentionally."
Yeah, totally.
And as soon as you start moving backwards, it's that negative energy again, and they latch onto that, and fuck, you might as well go home at that point. Yep. Like if you would have stuck to "Huh, you're dumb. I believe that you're dumb," she would have been like, "Yeah, fuck you, get a cab home."
Yep.
I don't care if you get stabbed and your kidneys get removed.
So true.
But turn that shit around and still got laid.
Money, dude. It's the difference between. I've always been a fan of this mentality, but it's like when you see a little kid fall down and they start to want to cry because that's like what they think they should do. But if you just picked them up and started, swinging them around, they forget all about the fact that they just fell down.
Yep.
So it's like that, but you're using words at this point. You're literally using your words to get out of that situation.
It's really important to be crafty, though. It's always it's a forward momentum, say what you say with intention kind of thing. And it works with jobs. It works everywhere.
Conviction is key, man.
Yeah.
Having conviction in your words and the way you talk. That's a huge way to steer a conversation. I
want to get into trying to steer conversation to like a sexual direction, because that's probably what a lot of people are most interested in. I would still say, as a beginner, getting them to talk about themselves the whole time is your best bet, because they're going to feel warm and toasty inside telling you their favorite stories. And if you just remember it and keep progressing things and talking about, then she's going to feel good, and you're going to have the luxury of not worrying about saying the wrong thing. But it's a powerful tool when you start bringing up, not directly, but like sexual things. So when you're having a normal conversation and a girl says something and you can use one of her word choices as a play on words, and then just like make a little sex joke out of it or whatever, boom, you're into the sex realm.
Well, that is if she responds positively to it.
Right. Well, it should be subtle enough. It should just be like,
oh, absolutely.
So here's a good one. So I was on a date with ATF girl. This is before she blew me off. And what was she talking about? She was talking about, so she worked for the ATF, so she's got a lot of experience with guns, and she's telling me about all the training exercises that she has with guns. I didn't actually tell you the story. So we're talking about her training with AR-15s, and they have to go on the range and like perform at a certain proficiency. with these AR-15s, and I'm telling her about mine and how long the barrel is, and the grip type and all these things. So you can see it's riddled with like there's little sexual shit. And so she goes, at one point we're talking about how long the barrel is on her assault rifle, and she says something like, yeah, the long black ones are always better. And it just doesn't occur to her that that's so sexual. And I just interrupt her and I go, yeah, the big black ones are always the best. And I just stare at her until she was kind of like in that storytelling, like I'm kind of looking off and trying to remember this. And then she looks at me and sees me staring at her with this like stupid look on my face. Like, you get it? It's a sex joke. But boom, like you're right there. Like you just made the transition. Yeah. It's that easy. You just made the transition from like casual work talk to sex.
Yep.
And that's a hard turn in like a normal conversation, but you just did it. So the conversation might still go in the direction that it was, but now it's lighter, and the conversation is inherently just a little bit sexual. So as soon as like something else that a sex pun might come up on, she's going to be keen on it. Now sex is on the mind. You just made the conversation sexual. So from there, you can try and work in some more serious, like sexual, I don't want to say sex, but sexual conversation where the energy is lighter and it's more towards this physical conversation where things might,
well, that's
take
the
a change.
thing. That's part of the trick there is if you do bring up, even if you have like a funny sex joke, literally like a joke that has like a setup and a punchline, you can gauge their feeling on it. And if they're immediately turned off by it, you either need to find a different route there that's maybe less aggressive, or they're probably just fucking with you for some reason.
They could be fucking with you. You might also have to accept that it's not happening now. Maybe next time.
Yeah.
There might be a different level of patience involved, which is a different value.
Yeah.
But
a good amount of steering the conversation towards that is, so you've already gotten, let's think of it like in terms of like a meal. So like you get the appetizer. That's all the questions and the things that you're asking. She should be asking you some questions too, but honestly, people like to talk about themselves. So if you can keep them talking about themselves as long as possible, that's genius.
That's actually a pretty common interview tactic too.
And I've definitely had friends who have gone on first dates and the other person is so nervous that they just blow their load. Like they just talk and talk and talk so fast. So if it's going too fast and you realize that the other person is like draining, stop them a little bit. Be like, hey, it's all good. Like, just take a deep breath, like...
what's funny
talk about some
is
stuff.
I refuse to believe that after the first date, someone can deduce that, oh, we have nothing in common. I don't think that's actually possible after a first date because...
How long have you known each other,
right?
It's like an hour.
Here's what the conversation entails on a first date. It's, oh, did you go to school? Cool, so did I. Do you work? Cool, so do I. We live in the same town. We both went to high school and have this goofy shit together.
Dude, let's face it.
So,
if you get to the point where you guys meet in person and you met on a dating site or something like that, you're both horny. You both want to fuck. Okay, it's either going to happen that night or within the next couple dates. Like, that's a given. And if it's not, the bitch is crazy and you need to get the fuck out of there. Okay?
That's why if your first date isn't over alcohol also, then you might as well go the fuck home.
Yeah,
you have to be talking there, and your inhibitions have to be coming down, and your comfort level has to be coming up at the same time.
Exactly.
Or else you guys are both sitting there with a cup of coffee, and now you're jittery at 8 p.m.
Yeah, it's like, get the fuck out of here. But okay, so you get the appetizer out of the way. Then you get to the dinner, and you get your dinner, and you're sitting there, and you're finally now comfortable with each other. You're looking at each other, you're staring at each other, blinking at each other like a bunch of faggots. Well, here's where you should try to get some more details out and some thicker, like some of the meat of the course. And that's mostly starting to be your own person and be charming, be witty, and say some things that are very organic and original for yourself that can kind of guide into a conversation of like, okay, so like this is why we're here, meaning what are your intentions for meeting me? Here's kind of my intentions for meeting you. And of course, these are all very subtly laying out. Like they're laid out in a way that it's not like you literally just said, "Hi, I'm this person, and now I want to fuck you because I'm really horny." You know, you're not doing that. You're sitting there going, "Yeah, you know, like I've seen a couple people every now and then, and nothing's really worked yet. So I'm just kind of waiting for that, you know, that click to happen, and I'm not trying to get into anything serious or anything like that." So you're laying out your intentions. And in the meanwhile, still talking about your you know, who you are. So like, oh yeah, these are my hobbies and things like that. And oh, here was an interesting experience that I had while I was doing this said hobby or whatever. And by the time you're done with that, if there's not some sort of satisfaction in like, oh, I'm actually pretty comfortable with this person now. Like, I would definitely like to pursue the rest of the night with them. Then get the fuck out.
You should change. This is an argument to be made for changing venues too, because if you suggest a change in venues and they're accepting of it, that means that's
key indicator they're interested.
Right. It's actually the biggest key. So once you clear those first 2 or 3 hurdles that we've talked about, you know, goofy early conversation, get to know each other's. Once you suggest a different venue, I usually just go straight for let's go back to my place. I have like. I keep nice drinks at my place. You know, mixed drinks. Hookah is a great one. You know, whiskey Coke, nice wine. A movie's a good one unless you're too late. But you know, as soon as you're back there, then if she accepts it, she has 1,000 reasons to be like, no, I have to go jerk off my pet duck tomorrow.
Or she could be like, no, you seem like you're going to rape me and like beat the fuck out of me. Like, if you come off like that, you're doing something wrong.
She has 1,000 reasons to say no. But you get her to come back home, your job is done.
Or go back to her place.
Or her whatever. Your job is done, though. That's probably like the nail in the coffin as far as conversation steering is. Like, you get all the early stuff done. You can test your work definitively by saying, hey, let's change venues.
Yes.
I prefer going home. If it's still early in the day, you guys go
to a different place,
music,
maybe where there's
bar.
Dancing. Yes.
Sure. Get the night started, whatever.
And that's where the dessert comes in. Because if you go dancing, let's say you go dancing, then you can really start to see, okay, like,
well, this is something that I wanted to get into next.
This is good. So
there's another dimension to conversation steering that's built into body language. And when you're on a date and you can close the distance between you guys, say one of my favorite dating tactics back in the day, not so much now, because I haven't had to use it. I'll still use it to this day, but if you're nice and toasty and you're close to, most people live in these like apartment complexes or whatever, there's a playground nearby. You can typically walk to them, whatever. I like to just go to a playground with like a flask or something, because then you can just like, you can sit on the swings. Sure, park. You can sit on the swings, you can chat, but there's a ton of opportunity for you to start making physical contact. And as soon as you start making physical contact, you'll either feel her reel back and like be like no, or be accepting of it and then return it. And as soon as you start, like, then boom. If she's
cool with it right away, boom. Done.
That could be. I mean,
if she reels back a little bit, but it's still questionable, maybe give it a couple more tries. If by the third try it's definitely reel back,
I say second.
Give up.
I have a 2-strike rule for me.
2-strike.
That's me personally, but
sure.
I still remember
second or third
on so many occasions as like, we go to this park, it's nice out, let's just sit on the swings like a couple of idiots and talk. Because all we're doing on a date is talking anyways.
At that point,
this accomplishes so many things too. It's like, I'm going to be playful and fun. Yeah. We're literally going to go to a playground and sit on this stupid swing that you haven't done for 5 years and talk.
Sure.
And then this is a true story, we're going to go stand on this bridge. I'm going to sit your ass up on the railing and make out with you. You break that physical barrier and you've just made it sexual. It doesn't mean that you hook up that night, but you're in.
You're in.
Deal done.
And if the night takes you back to your place, sweet. Let's say you do go. Well, okay. So let's say you go dancing. The same thing applies. Space. If you guys get super close in, it's a done deal. That's dessert right there. The next step after you go dancing is to go home. Let's say you go home. okay, so now you're at home. The conversation should still continue based on what you've been talking about initially, and you should start guiding it towards something where you have one last line before you start to initiate more contact, mainly just straight making out. If she comes home with you, honestly, you have very minimal chance of fucking up. Here's where you can fuck up, is you get nervous and you think, oh, I can't touch this girl, I don't. But if you get her home, you're sitting on the couch, you're not even watching TV or anything, you should be ready to pull some line where you're just like one of the best line that I pulled probably was with Zoe. Because I was sitting there, oh, fuck, what was it? It was so good, too. I'm sitting there, and we were both just blinking at each other at some point, and I swear it was something along the lines of like, so something like, so maybe you should just shut up and we'll make it. I don't know. God damn, it was terrible. It was super cheesy, but it worked.
Right.
And then I just went in for the kiss, and boom, money. I'm really creative in the moment. I can't for the fuck of me remember what I said, but nonetheless, I came out of it thinking like,
dude,
God damn it, I'm just so goddamn slick at that shit.
When the sexual tension builds up to a certain level,
you could probably
No. Okay, I've done this. I've done this on more than one occasion, and it's usually because I'm drunk and I'm confident out of my fucking mind. But on more than one occasion, I've listened to girls. They're just talking, and I know that they're kind of burning time, and I kind of grab them by the back of their head, and I just go, shut up, and then you go straight for the makeout. And the combination of those two, they fucking melt in your hands.
Yes, that's what I did. I said something along the lines of, well, maybe we should stop talking then.
And make out.
Yes.
It's funny. They just melt in your hands.
You're so right.
And you're literally disrespecting them like to their face, but if any guy out there has a counter example to that, I would love to hear it, because I'm 100% for it, and I've never heard anyone else failing to it. But I wanted to back up a little bit because you touched on something that I wanted to get to.
Sure.
Is when you're on a first or second date, even if you slept together, it's a super valuable tool for you to like team up and try and focus your energy outwards. So one of my favorite things to do is, not necessarily on a first date, but any date, is look around the bar, wherever you are. And I do this even if I'm not on a date, because it's just how I am. But I like to look around and see if I can pinpoint like other people on first dates, which is super fun because the body language, you can study the body language from afar. You can be like, oh, he's too attractive for her, or she's too attractive for him. Analyze what they're drinking, their body language, how they're interacting with the waitress, whatever. But if you can get your date in on that, then all of a sudden, like, you're inherently putting yourself on the team with the girl that you're with. So you're like, hey, you and me, let's look at this other team. Let's focus our energy towards them and see what's going on. And then we can play this fun game of like, well, what's he saying? Well, what's she saying? How do you think they met? Are they here on a Tinder date? Why did they choose here? And all of a sudden, like, you just built this game on talking points.
It's actually a great way of understanding conversations, too, in the sense of, like, how are these people interacting and what's getting done right now?
Well, and then maybe how are people kind of maybe perceiving us,
Yeah. Another story that I had, you bring up body language, and that's actually really key to steering a conversation.
We should probably do our own podcast on body language at some point.
Sure, maybe.
Sure.
But to touch on that a little bit, so I was in a foreign place to me. I didn't really know the place very well. I was up in Idaho Falls, Idaho. No one the fuck lives there. I would be surprised if even a single person who's listening to this knows where that is. But I was visiting my buddy up there, so this isn't even my house, this isn't even my territory. But I matched this girl on Tinder. We matched, one day, and I had already planned, like, hey, come and meet me at this little Mexican restaurant that's like right up the street. So I walk up there, and I meet her. She's all dolled up, and of course, I should say with the caveat of some of these stories that I'm telling, these women might be slightly desperate.
Well, Idaho Falls has a total of 2 guys and 3 women.
That's what I'm saying. So it's definitely luck and also maybe some sort of unfair advantage or a fair advantage. I don't really know. Nonetheless, I meet another human being, a woman, at this place, and I'm talking to her, and I'm sitting there, and I break the news to her that I'm only here for one night, basically, like 2 more nights.
Which is actually a pretty strong signal.
It's huge
in the conversation realm. It's like,
so
we're not just here to chat.
Well, we exchanged, niceties. Hey, hi, I'm this person. What do you do? Blah, 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 blah. How was your day and all this stuff? And so I'm leading it up to this moment where I know, okay, this is a big moment. I have to tell her the truth. I'm here for this much more amount of time and gauge her response off that. The moment I break that to her, I saw the thought run through her head. She literally thought about it for, a split second going,
am I going to fuck this guy tonight?
Well, it's not just that. It's he's only here for this. So that means his intention is this. And that means that I can get laid. And she was okay with it. And in my head, I was going, yes, yes, boom. I was like, yes, I get it. I'm going to get this tonight. And from that point on, any other thing that I could have said or done, it was moot. Because I knew that in her head, in my head, we had already sealed the deal.
Everything's null and void.
We had already sealed the deal, and we went to another bar after that. I threw some deep shit at her, and from that point on, it was over, man. Like, we go back to her place, and I smash, and then...
That's the fast math that you're talking about.
That's what I'm saying.
Everything that you say, you've got to have 1 or 2 steps ahead of you, and you have to know what the repercussions are 1 or 2 steps ahead of you, so you can dance around the reaction.
The interesting thing too was that was one of the first times I had encountered that situation where I knew I was going to encounter that situation of having to actually be honest, because I'd thought about lying and being like, no, I live here and I actually go to school up the street, and I was like, no, I've never had my game oriented to where I lie. I'm very straightforward. I'm very honest, and the worst that I knew would happen would she'd be like, oh, so you're just trying to have sex with me. And maybe she wouldn't have said that blatantly, but she would have kind of, her body language would have changed. She would have maybe, rotated the other way and been like, well, this is kind of weird now. And I would have been like, okay, I'm going to go home.
Here's the thing. She doesn't want to waste her time either. She would have been like, sorry, you're not what I'm looking for. If you're only here for a night, it's been nice talking to you. Bye.
Exactly. And I didn't tell her prior to meeting her that I was only there for 2 nights.
Sure, you had
so I told her in person, which was actually probably a slick move, because she was able to meet me and size me up, see what I was wearing, experience my charm, experience my wit, experience my energy. And from that, she was like, she must have gauged enough where she was like, okay, this dude not only meets the threshold, maybe sits a little bit above my threshold for what I want. So that was a very interesting example of a conversation where I had to literally eventually bring up the fact that, yes, I'm here for a temporary period of time. Do you want to fuck? And it was all very subtle language.
Right. You kept everything moving in the direction that you wanted it to. All right, cool. I think we're going to bring it down there.
Hey, if you all could leave some solid criticism for these podcasts, that would be great, because we're trying to get feedback and trying to understand what the audience of these wants or expects or even doesn't like, because, we're not going to necessarily tailor it to anyone specific, but we're definitely open to suggestions, so let us know what's going on.
We're just having a good time doing this, and we're going to keep this coming. We're going to expand on, I think we talked about body language a little bit, a couple other concepts that we got to, but in time. So stay tuned.
Thanks for listening.